It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby. This week, I am honored to have a special guest back that just joined me a couple weeks ago for live Taxi TV, Kevin McNoldy. How are you, Kevin?
I'm great. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's a very generous audience. So at some point, I can't remember if it was during setup last time or after we finished, Kevin mentioned to me, asked me about crowdfunding. And I said, honestly, I'm pretty ignorant about crowdfunding. I know what it is, and I've seen some good crowdfunding campaigns, but I don't know much. And he goes, well, I actually know quite a bit because I've done stuff for my stuff and helped a bunch of other people get their stuff straight. So I invited him back to do this episode on a topic we've never, ever done in our 14 or 15 year history. So I'm really excited about this. And because I'm so unknowledgeable, basically I'm going to hand the mic to Kevin, figuratively speaking, and just let him run. We've got a bunch of still shots. He'll tell me what to bring up and when. So without any further ado, Kevin, teach us a lot.
Hi.
Hi.
Kevin. You want to pull up the picture of my studio just so they are reminded who I am?
This is Kevin's playground. I am so jealous.
I'm sitting in there right now.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's my mastering. It's a private mastering and mixing room, and I do some production out of there whenever I find a cool artist to work with. So I'm in there 24 hours a day. And occasionally I'm let out for a dinner or something.
It's gorgeous. And I'm actually featuring the company that you use for all the acoustic panels. It's going to be one of our cool stuff things in our up and coming newsletter because I'm so impressed with what you've got there. And the problem was Kevin had a really nice studio with an SSL in it and then eventually moved into this one. But he couldn't take any of the walls out of the old one with him. So he used all these panels. What's the company? Let's give him a little plug.
Real Traps.
Say again.
Real Traps Acoustics.
Real Traps Acoustics. Okay. So as I noted in the newsletter, their website could use a little updating, but their products don't need any updating because they're awesome. And believe me, I have great faith in Kevin's judgment about them. And he can take everything you see off these walls. So if he ever moves to another studio, not a problem. All he's got to do is go out and buy a couple of gallons of purple paint, put those in the back of a U-Haul, and you're good to go, right?
Yeah, any color's fine as long as it's purple. That's what I say.
You and Prince.
Yeah, what's cool about these is there is some work to hang them off the ceilings and have them in the corner. But I set up the room and then the bass trapping in the corners wasn't enough. So then I went back to them and I put these giant ones that you can see where the light is too bright in the corner there. Those are corner triangular bass traps, and then I went all the way up to the ceiling with a sort of triangle trap on top of that. So what's cool about this is it's not just a built-in thing based on mathematics that's in the room and then you can't take it with you. It's modular, but it's also that's the great thing about it is if something's not quite right, you can go through and just add stuff and move stuff around and get the room tuned exactly how you want it.
Wow, it's very impressive.
There's a small trap up in the corner. So if you look at the corner with the triangular traps, there's a small square one over sort of different sized one right behind the right side screen.
Right. Yeah, to the right of that light. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's an example of I got the room done, and then it was there's a tiny little bit of slapback of something happening on that side, and then so I just went and ordered 2 more small traps that I could put up there to control that. Very cool. It's very cool. You can go in and completely tune the room exactly how you want it. It reveals a lot of stuff otherwise. So I floated the desks. They have resilient flotation things on them. It's hard to see in the photo, but everything is kind of able to vibrate on its own and not touch each other or create any resonance at all in any of the fixtures.
All right, let's get into the heart of the matter, but your audio's
Yes.
a little lower now than when we did our test. Can you give me like a 1/16 of an inch boost on your end?
Yep. Is that better?
Keep going.
Yeah. Here I am. Hopefully I'm loud. I'll talk
Still
louder
a little
too.
low.
That's up all the way on my side.
Really? Okay, and you're as close to the mic as before, because I'm not getting any yellow or red on you, but I am on me. I've got you max.
Yeah. And there's nothing in the.
There we go.
It's good? Okay.
Yeah. Now
All right.
Perfect.
All right, enough of my room.
All right, your mic sounds beautiful. All right, so take it away. Let's talk crowdfunding. Cool. I'm going to kick back and enjoy a coconut water while you educate us.
Oh, there you go. All right, we'll just sort of go along, but I wanted to start kind of how we started the mastering chat, where we talked about how we both had studios, how things worked in the old days, and then kind of worked our way up to modern times. So the thing to talk about is how the recording industry used to work, how it used to work with record labels, how it used to work with getting bands signed to contracts and stuff like that.
Right.
This will be a very simplified version, but back when I started, bands would write songs, we would record demos or sometimes a finished single. We'd put an album together, it would be like their first release, and they would go play shows, perform for A&R people at record labels who had the ability to sign them. And hopefully they attracted a record label deal. If that worked out, the label would sign the band to a contract and they would get upfront money to pay for the studio time, the marketing, the launch of the music when it was finished. And then there was usually an advance to the band members for the signing, so they could more fully concentrate on their music careers. The bad part about that, the horror stories that you hear about those kind of contracts, was based very much on that the money was owed back to the label, but it was paid back through the percentage that the band received on the sales of the product. So in other words, if a CD sold, the record label got $8 out of that for themselves, the band got $1, and the band didn't see that $1 until the $250,000 that they received up front was paid off.
Right.
So it was
recouped.
Impossible. Yeah, recouped. An impossible situation for 99% of bands because it was a horrible deal and basically resembled like credit cards with a 50% interest rate on them. So even with a hit, if you had a minor hit and you'd think that money would start coming in, many bands never got a paycheck. So this is one of the things that eroded the music industry over time and kind of devalued the copyright of songs, was like all this kind of stuff was going on. And then, you had file sharing came into play and like the copyright was eroded further. And then what started to happen was the music industry started shifting, and some of these artists that were sort of like medium level, or they had a hit and then nothing ever else materialized, they started getting dropped by these labels. And a lot of them were looking for like, how do I continue my career but not be in that machine because it doesn't work for what I'm doing? There's just like, these gatekeepers have a certain way of doing things. They want to sign a certain artist with a certain look, with a certain sound, and then they control everything as the gatekeepers to the larger sort of multi-platinum way of getting to that level. And meanwhile, 99% of artists don't need to exist at a multi-platinum level. They'll never achieve that, but they still can have careers. So the best example that I have of this is the artist Amanda Palmer, if you've ever heard of her.
Absolutely. Yeah, she was probably the most famous crowdfunding artist of the time, of that time.
Biggest crowdfunding campaign in Kickstarter history. So she was, when you hear these numbers, this is the fascinating part about this to me. This is what initially got me interested in this. So she was signed to a record label deal and never made it big, despite them pressuring her to write more commercial music, look a certain way, all that horror story stuff that you hear about. And at the time, even though it's sold more since then, her last record label release only sold about 25,000 copies. So when you're paying back that big investment, when you're recouping what you owe the record label, and you only sell 25,000 copies, that puts you in a position where it's viewed by a record label as a colossal failure. Like, you're not even close to recouping. There's no way that you're making money. There's no way that they're covering costs. And so not being able to recoup, looking like a complete failure in terms of the record label machine, she was eventually dropped by her record label. This was right around the beginning of Kickstarter. And so she jumped into that and launched a Kickstarter campaign, crowdfunding campaign, to fund her own self-released album, art book, and tour. Her initial goal was $100,000, but the crowdfunding picked up steam, and she ended up pulling in $1.2 million. Now, not everybody can do that. This is an artist who had promotion, who was on a label, who was out touring all the time. The fascinating thing about this is, and you can pull that photo up of her, that I think that's the second one, or it's labeled 1. So this is no, it's the one before that. Sorry, I labeled that one 1. Yeah. So this is Amanda Palmer. It might be blurry in the feed, but that's her Kickstarter homepage. And if you see the numbers in the bottom right, she pulled in close to $1.2 million, and it was from almost 25,000 backers. So, in other words, she only sold 25,000 records on a label, which is considered a complete failure. As an independent artist running a crowdfunding campaign to self-fund her next release, if you look at those numbers and take that literally, it looks as though 25,000 people bought her record on a record label and then followed her to being an independent artist and contributed to her campaign. So those 25,000 people are her core true fans.
So let's do some quick math. I'm breaking out my calculator. Yeah. So $1.2 million. Whoops. Okay, divided by 25,000 people, I got $48 per person is what they gave, which is, more than twice what they would have spent on the record.
Yeah, and there's different reward levels. So, some might have put in 1,000 to get a certain level of stuff back and swag and more than just a CD. This book of art that she had in there, and she was also paying for a tour. So there's various levels that they pledged, and it was, from $10 all the way up to $5,000. So on average, they spent $50 a piece. And that's the thing. If you have your tribe, your true fan customers who are following you, they will spend more because there's more interaction. There's more that you can give them. On a record label, you're treated as like an untouchable artist on stage like Prince. And then on your own like this, you can be direct to fan. When she goes on tour, she stays at her fans' houses. She sleeps in people's extra bedroom. So she's as close.
I'd be afraid.
Yeah. She's as close to sort of the ideal artist to fan relationship that you can possibly get. And that's different than a lot of people would be comfortable with. But she's an amazing artist, very open with all of this. And the amazing thing about this is that she did this and pulled that money in and funded everything that she did. She later moved to Patreon, which is crowdfunding, but it's more of a monthly subscription model.
Right.
And guess how many members she has who contribute to her music every month on Patreon?
I'm going to guess 25,000.
It's 23,000. So not everyone followed her, but it's basically the same number. So this artist who in the record label machine on a spreadsheet is a complete failure is an absolute success with complete financial backing when she's on her own and can do this straight to fan.
So if I may interject a question. So she raised $1.2 million. She had to use some of that money to make the record, some of that money to set up the tour, some of that money to pay staff probably to help her, at least an assistant or two. So does she get to pocket the difference, which is the profit margin? So let's say she spent whoops, let me kill that email so we don't have to listen to ding ding all the time. So does she, let's say she spent $200,000 on that I'm going to go back to the shot of you and I now. Let's say she spent $200K on those ancillary things, let's say 125 on the tour and 75 on miscellaneous stuff. Does she get to pocket that $1 million, or does she have to show people because they've contributed and they're supporting her? Does she have any financial obligation to them other than to send them the book or the CD or whatever, and whatever profit she makes?
There's a profit to be made with it. I think she's the type of artist that it most of it probably went back into, turning herself into her own record label and publishing company. So I think this probably went from like a 1-year financial goal based on what she was trying to achieve to stretching that out for 5 years. But yeah, the fans, anybody contributing to a campaign is putting in for the reward level that they're paying into. So you can add things if you hit your initial goal and you want to set a stretch goal so everybody gets more for their money. But the real goal with this is, as an artist, to do the things that you want to do and provide to your followers what you want to create, whether it's the music or music combined with a tour like this, or music combined with a book of art, and then have some left over to have a career, to be able to live, to be able to spend your time writing music and planning your tour and all that kind of thing.
So I'm going to guess that no artist does this on an annual basis and pockets $1 million a year. Can you give me an idea of the frequency at which people would post a new campaign? Somebody who has their act together and is actively doing this and knows what they're doing, how often do they do it?
I've had one artist that I work with did his first campaign that was just for the mixing of his album, so it was smaller, and then he did a separate one a couple years later for the mastering of a different album. So it's something that you can return to. It's probably a 2 or 3 year window. But I as you see with Amanda Palmer moving to Patreon, you kind of figure out what your fan base is comfortable with and where they live and where they want to experience you. And then it's not just Kickstarter where it's one thing and it's one goal. You can move to something that's more a subscription and a monthly thing where it's more real-time interaction with everyone and you're handing them the product that month. So there's many different versions of this, and I think we'll go through a few more artists here, but several of these artists have gone from the Kickstarter campaign, which was focused on one album, one project, and then they've gone more to the monthly subscription model. So it's really, we'll get into sort of the semantics of this, but a lot of this is in today's music industry, there's no more millions of people, it's thousands of people. And this is an artist with 25,000 true fan customers who has a career based on that. So when you see a number like that, it's not overwhelming to most musicians. And we're going to get to people with even less of a following, but still pulled in a good amount of money and have a career based on that. So it's a lot of people that I work with still talk about record labels and record label deals and the pie in the sky. I want to be on radio. And the comment from my side is always yeah, that's great. We can showcase for labels. We can do it the old school way. But now there's this other way where if you do the work and you focus on this and you find your true tribe that will follow you and they want to pay for whatever you create every year, you have a career. And here's the hint these days is with the labels that I work with, there's no record label that will sign you today if you haven't done this work enough to go ahead and do a Kickstarter and have this kind of fan base follow you.
We may have talked about this during our last interview, but yeah, you know, back in my day, our day, the bands that got signed, for the most part, you know, people think there was this fallacy that you could have one killer song and get signed on that. Maybe that happened, you know, but it was extremely rare. But the labels would generally want to know, are there more hit songs in the hopper, number one? Yep. Are you playing local gigs? Are you touring in concentric circles, meaning that you start out, I mentioned this the other day with an interview I did with Tony Van Veen at Discmakers. You start out with a 50-mile radius, and after those clubs are sold out once or twice, 3 times a week to capacity, you expand to a 100-mile radius, then a 500-mile radius, then all the way up and down the East Coast. That's what labels wanted to see. They were mostly interested in signing acts that proved we have our act together on a writing level, performance level, and self-marketing and self-management level if they didn't have a professional manager. And it's really no different today. The labels are like, we'll invest in you if there's proof of concept.
Yeah. And the difference, in my opinion, is to get to the point where you prove out that proof of concept, you now have this other avenue that you can pivot to. You don't have to take the deal. The deal is there. They're still gatekeepers to certain things. They're gatekeepers to terrestrial radio. They're gatekeepers to satellite radio. There's ways into that. There's ways to get on Spotify playlists and stuff. So there is a lot you can do on your own. But if you want to get on a top 40 radio station, you're going through a gatekeeper to do that. You have to go through a record label to get to that point. Now, do you need that to have a career? Or, you know, can you go to a label and just lease the bits, lease your album to get those bits? That's the way to do a deal today. But also, there's this whole other avenue of going, I'm comfortable with this number of thousands of fans. I like where this is going. I like going direct to customer. Maybe that's not my thing. Maybe I don't fit the image, or I don't, you know.
Yeah.
There's a million different aspects of this now, but now you have this path to go direct to your customer and be completely interactive with them, and self-fund and become your own record label, be your own music publishing company, and control everything. So that's the thing. A record deal is still a record deal. You're still paying things back through your portion, and even though record deals are a little bit more fair to the artists these days, it's still paid back the same way. They still recoup the same way. Even if it's a 50-50 relationship of percentage, you're still the one paying through your percentage back that loan while they're making money straight off.
It sounds like it can't lose proposition. If you prove the concept by doing a crowdfunding campaign or Patreon, whatever form it takes, and you've got that financial base, you've got this, as you mentioned, a tremendous lever to negotiate with the label. And if they don't make you a deal you're happy with, you go, that's cool. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And if you go with the label and things belly up, which statistically they probably will, you can always go back to what you were doing. You don't even have to necessarily stop it, do you? If you get signed by a label, do you have to take down your Patreon or any of that stuff?
No, that's the thing. And like, let's talk about the next two bands because they're good examples of this.
Do you want me to bring up the next slide?
So the two slide there is this is Toad the Wet. No, the one before that. This is Toad the Wet Sprocket, and you. Not to age us, but like they had a couple of hits in the early 90s. The one song was All I Want, and they had a follow-up single that did well, Walk on the Ocean, which was one of the only songs, I think, around that time that was a waltz. Right? Yes, it's a waltz.
And it wasn't grunge, which was what was mostly happening then. So they had to be really good at what they did because it was contrary to what the public seemed to like.
Yeah. There was a few bands around that time that did. They had a slightly heavy sound, kind of rock, kind of not just, but just really good songs. And this band kind of stood out at the time. And so like most bands around that era, they had some hits. They were all over MTV for a while, and then they weren't anymore. It's just how it works,
Yeah.
You have hits until you don't have hits. So, cue this many years later, they didn't know what Kickstarter was. Somebody that they work with, a manager or a friend or something, told them about this, showed them the Amanda Palmer one. And so they launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund the recording of a new self-released album. And in the end, 6,000 backers contributed $260,000 to support the project. So instead of being in debt for that amount to a record label, their fans prepaid for the production, recording, mixing, and mastering of their independently released album. And then they pulled in enough with that extra amount over what their goal was that they were able to tour from that and then release more music. So this is a band that, like many in the 90s, faded into obscurity. And then they threw themselves back out there, were very open with their followers about what they were trying to do and the trials and tribulations of being on a record label and getting dumped and all that kind of thing. And when you look at this is a band that went top 10 with those two songs back in the 90s, and their true fan customer number was 6,000 people. Now, do they go touring across the United States and there's only 6,000 people showing up? No. They have a huge fan base now. But the people that will show up for a crowdfunding campaign and throw money in and support the band and like pay higher than just buying a CD so they get more stuff, that's a true fan customer. So again, like I'll talk about this again at the end of this discussion, but like if you were in a band in the 90s, in the 2000s, and you've come to Taxi because you want to monetize music that you made, that it could get in some TV and film. If you played on your college campus and you had any popularity whatsoever, any kind of following, no matter how small, those people are still out there. Like, you're only looking at one side of the coin. If you're on Taxi and you're trying to monetize the stuff for sync, that's a completely viable way to go. I've done that myself. When I started doing all this, I had an album I did in the late 80s, and that still earns money. It got on like MTV's The Real World and a couple other MTV shows. I still get checks for that. So if you had anything going on like that, or you've come to Taxi through that kind of avenue, like, you could be doing this sort of thing and refinding your base that was there at the beginning, and they all want to hear from you. Like, there's a market for this, and you're probably not going to pull in 260 grand, but there's money out there that's yours. Like, you have a fan base, you have followers who want to hear your music, who never got over you breaking up or leaving college and nothing happened after that, or you got on radio and that was it. Like, there's a market for what you have and what you do. Believe me, we'll get to some examples. And then the next example I have, the 3 Delta Rae. This is a great example. When I show Delta Rae, many of you might not know who this is. They actually started in North Carolina, and I went and saw them at the very beginning, and they're like a modern day Fleetwood Mac, just absolutely amazing band. One of the best live bands I've ever seen in my entire life. And so they started by doing a Kickstarter way, way long time ago, and they had just started touring, and they pulled in about $30,000 doing that. Then they built up their career, got to the point where they attracted a record label deal, and they signed to a deal. And then nothing happened. So they put out a couple albums. I went and saw them all the time. I love this band. I don't know any of them personally, but I just love this band. And they just nothing happened on the label. They put out a few albums and it was just nothing was sticking. It didn't feel right. Every time they put something out, I'd be like, God, there's really underselling this band. And then they even tried to go a little more country in the sound of it, because record labels just thought, let's just make everybody country for a while, and that would stick. And nothing really worked. And so what happened with this band was their record label was sold and they were dropped in the sale. They immediately pivoted to launching a Kickstarter campaign, this one that you see here. And they did well on their own, and they achieved their goal in about 24 hours. They pulled in about 150,000. But if you can see the number there, they ended about 460,000, 450,000.
Nice.
The reason that happened was they reached their goal, but the story was they were on the record label that was part of the sale to Scooter Braun, and he's the guy like that was the manager who bought Taylor Swift's publishing catalog. So there was this moment where Taylor Swift was online complaining about this guy, Scooter Braun. And he had been part of the purchase of this label that got Delta Rae dumped. And so all of the Swifties realized that Delta Rae was caught up in this guy being part of all this. And they went from 150,000 and looking like that's where it was going to stop to 450,000, because Taylor Swift fans came in and pushed the band to that number.
Wow, so it was kind of a sympathy vote, but people put their money where their mouth was.
Yeah. The thing is, like, all those Taylor Swift fans got to hear this band and experience them and then help them, which is great, because, like, that's the ultimate goal. So if you look at their number...
Going back.
Sorry if you took that down. And it might be blurry, but, like, again, these are not, like, 1 million backers. This is a little over 5,000 contributors, okay, wow, to hit the 450,000 mark. So again, no matter what you think of your music or what you might have done in the past with it and stuff like that, this is a band that achieved that number from 5,000 people. So again, we're living in an era where there's no more David Bowies. You're not going to, sell 20 million records and go on giant stadium tours. But there is a way to make a living doing this and be independent and go straight to your customer.
And here's the interesting thing is when people get a major record deal, the vast majority end up bombing or getting dropped or whatever. They don't make their recoupment, and it's over. The ones who are successful have to wait much longer than they ever thought possible to get that money. And when they do get it, they tend to think it's going to go on forever, and they spend at that level, and then second record fails or the fourth record fails, their career is over. And they don't have a lot to show for it for retirement, which is one of the reasons most of us work, is so that at some point we don't have to work and we can enjoy life a little bit, do some traveling, whatever. So with Kickstarter, and I always say this about music licensing, your career doesn't end. It can go on as long as you are actively making and licensing music or actively doing Kickstarters and making music, which is nice. I actually had an article published, maybe it was Music Connection or Electronic Musician, wherever, long time ago, 15 years ago or more. I wrote an article called The Musician Middle Class, which I was the first person, if I can pat myself on the back and be a little immodest here, I was the first person that ever publicly talked about you don't need to make millions of dollars. You'll retire. Most rock stars don't retire well. They blow it. But yet doing music licensing or doing what you're suggesting with crowdfunding, you can create an ongoing doctor, lawyer income stream.
Yeah, exactly. And like Delta Rae is a great example because I would argue that when this airs, like a lot of people probably have not heard of this band. Or if you're like me and you discovered them, like you probably saw them live and really saw how incredible they are. And And so they went from doing that Kickstarter that didn't just fund the record that they were going to make, that helped pay for a tour. And then they created their own website off of this, that instead of using Patreon, they have a subscription model on their website. So you can actually go and subscribe, pay monthly, and you get complete behind the scenes access to everything that they do. So it's another example of like they did the big push for the one project and then they converted that into the monthly subscription model.
Has
and
anybody...
again,
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Has anybody ever done a study to look at the percentage of true fans versus, let's say you have a mailing list of 50,000 people or 70,000 or 100,000, whatever the number is, how many people show up and contribute money, whether it's through Patreon or crowdfunding, whatever. Is there kind of a standard percentage that somebody could do the math on and go, well, we've got 18,000 people on our email list. If the norm is true for us, then 2,100 of these are going to be true fans, and we're putting something out where they're going to contribute $50 each. Is that number a known number?
It's not a known number because it's so variable based on your interactivity with your followers.
Oh, so it's like everything else in life. The harder you work, the better it gets.
Yeah, but it's also like the and I'll get into that like more in depth in how this matters. Like a lot of this is like, it's as much as record labels have changed, and this has become more of the model of sort of self-funding, doing crowdfunding to do the same level of art that you were doing before with record labels. The other thing that's changed is that fan to artist relationship. Like if you saw, we talked about Prince before the cameras went on. And like, if you saw Prince, he was this godlike figure on stage, untouchable, and he would do the show and he would walk off and that was it. And you're like, oh my God, Prince changed my life. Right. But he was up there and you were down here. And the way it works today is there's no longer that separation of he's up there and you're down here. You're all on the same floor and they're walking into the crowd to talk to you because you're as important to the expression of their art as them just writing it or creating it. So it's the interactivity, it's the communicativeness, it's the openness and kind of direct discussion with people. That's the selling point these days.
Makes perfect sense. They always say it's the people in the first 3 rows are the ones that are going to give you juice when you're on stage doing a live performance. Well, those people in the first few rows are also the people that are showing up to support these acts by whipping out their wallet. Yeah.
And it's also like with that level of communication that you have with people, if you're a typical musician and like I'm as guilty as anybody, I'll just post about projects that I worked on and put a link in. So if you spend a lot of your time just sort of promoting, that's off-putting to people these days. If you spend your time having a conversation back and forth and bringing people behind the scenes and into your world, and then 1 out of every 10 things that you post are the self-promotion type things, then you're creating that relationship. So it's just a completely different world, and a lot of artists my age, ones that I work with or produced back in the day, who haven't really had a career since that first initial hit or, getting to mid-level. And when I talk about this stuff, it's very foreign to them. It's very off-putting. Like, I'm going to ask people for money.
Oh, let's talk about that for a moment, because I would say as a general statement, most people don't like marketing themselves, promoting themselves, selling themselves, or asking for money. When you get into creative people, they are even more averse to doing that, is my observation, having worked with artistic people for 50 years. They hate, and it just like freaks them out. You want me to actually ask people to contribute to this? But why is that where it's bigger off-putting thing for artistic people. It's already bad for the general public, seems to be more off-putting for artists. Is there any advice you can give on how people can get over it and realize that there's a pot of gold sitting on the table, and all they have to do to access it is do this very stuff you're recommending?
So here's the thing about it. I'm sure you've seen friends occasionally, like some bad health disaster happens to someone that you know, and then and sometimes they're musicians, and suddenly they figure out crowdfunding, or a friend goes in and creates a crowdfunding campaign, a GoFundMe, to help them. And like GoFundMe and Indiegogo are like a different model of the Kickstarter model. Kickstarter is all or nothing. So you set the goal, and if you don't reach it, you don't get anything. Indiegogo and GoFundMe, you have an initial goal, and you get to keep everything whether you hit that goal or not. You pay slightly higher fees if you don't hit the goal. But that's why GoFundMe is so popular for, healthcare insurance companies not paying for stuff, people getting in trouble or having heart attacks and like needing help, or something goes wrong, flooding, house fires, anything like that. Like, people usually go to GoFundMe for help because it gives you the ability to keep anything that comes in when you're at your most desperate moment. So that's my argument, is if in a time of absolute desperation, you would figure it out and you would go on there, and it's the right thing to do. It sucks that we live in a country that maybe you need to do that, and that's a whole completely different conversation. But the fact is that when that disaster comes, that's what people go to, and you figure it out. Okay, so why is your art not as important as that to you?
Well, I would make the argument surviving cancer, let's say, might be a little higher on the Richter scale than buy my music, but
except that a lot of people like me, this is like your entire life. You feel like you were born to do this. It's absolutely like, I wake up and I live and breathe music all day, whether I'm working on my own or I'm working on somebody else's. It's the most fulfilling, deep experience. And my relationship to music is like the most deep relationship of my entire life. Like,
whoops, I hope your wife doesn't watch this episode.
I mean, you're number one, and then there's the muse, the music muse. But it's like it should feel that vital to you. Like, it's, and the thing is, like, even if it's, I understand, like, a medical emergency takes precedent over this kind of thing. But like, to those people who listen to you back in the day, or those people that will experience your music, and it will hit them at their core in a moment in their life, it will emotionally affect them forever, and they will always remember something that you wrote because it ties into something that happened for them. Like, it is as important to a regular listener as anything else that we're talking about. So whatever fear you have, I mean, it's legitimate. I'm not comfortable being on camera talking, but like, you get over it and you just do it, because this is like, if you're doing music at the level that you joined Taxi to get sync opportunities, and you have something that was released that you had a fan base, and you don't take advantage of something like this, this is your own fear. It's not
right
that it can't happen or whatever is too hard. It's just fear. That's it.
Interesting that you said that, because in the past, people love to blame the man. Oh, the industry sucks. They make it so hard for an indie artist to get signed. They make it so hard to have a hit record. They're trying to take advantage of us. If somebody fails to do this, or fails to do it well enough that it pans out for them, they've got nobody. Maybe they blame Kickstarter or GoFundMe. I don't know. But you can't really blame the man if you don't get off your butt and do it.
And I'm going to show you two examples of my own where they had literally no followers at all. They never toured. These are starting artists, beginning artists, different age group between the two of them.
So they had no email list, no nothing. They were
Nothing.
literally unknown. Wow. You know what?
Yeah.
That's going to be the case for most people watching the show. Yeah. They probably have a small following or no following at all. You know, maybe there's some taxi members that have 5,000 or 10,000 or something. But all right, should I click on the number 5 slide?
Let me see which one that is.
It's the one after Ariel. It's the pinkish one.
Ariel's thing. Next. So let me make sure. Check my notes here.
Okay.
So there was a writer, Kevin McNoldy, who wrote an essay about crowdfunding before it became a thing. And let me just quote him quickly, because Ariel says this in her book too. To be a successful creator, you don't need millions these days. You don't need millions of dollars or millions of customers, millions of clients, or millions of fans. You only need thousands of fans. His concept was that you can have a direct relationship with 1,000 true fans who are willing to pay $100 per year for anything you create, and then you have a career. It's very basic premise, and like the numbers could be up or down on either side of that equation, but that's the point. If you can find your true tribe and create enough content that they are getting value of what you have to offer on a yearly basis to the point that they're willing to pay for it, then you have a career. And this is a very great thing to look at when you're doing like taxi sync opportunities, because we talked about this when we talked about mastering. Like, I feel like a lot of taxi listings are stuff where you should write for that listing. You should get in the emotional mindset of what they're asking for and learn to write for that. Your own artistic expressions, your own songs, your own products as an artist may fit something and may not, but a lot of people hit their head against the wall because they wrote a beautiful song 20 years ago, and then they're trying to apply it to listings where they need something very modern. It's very this thing. They're showing examples that were released within the last year.
But I believe people think, oh, my song is so good when they hear it. What they actually think they need won't matter. They will eschew that in favor of my song because it's so awesome, which is total fantasy.
So that's the thing, is like these two things really can work together, because if you have a few songs that might fit the listings, they're perfect to throw in. If you can write to the listings, even better. And then if you take the artistic side where you're expressing yourself as a music artist and it's not so much for sync, that's where this kind of stuff fits into crowdfunding, in my opinion, because there's a following for whatever you create. So, and like his point is, there's billions of people in the world, and it's unreasonable to think that there's not at least 1,000 people anywhere who would connect with your music, no matter what style it is or what you do, or even the recording quality. There are 1,000 people in this world who will connect with your writing. It's just, the odds are with you. It's
okay. That leads me to something which I hope I'm not messing up your timeline about things or the order in which you want to talk about them. But I wrote the word marketing down and circled it like 5 times on a piece of paper next to me. As I've mentioned to you before, and I think most of the viewers of Taxi TV know, I love marketing books. I don't know why, because most of what I read in one this week will repeat 70% of the one I read last week or last year.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's a game. It's a challenge. It's like winning a football game. I'm totally obsessed with marketing. And yes, what you say is absolutely true, but people have to learn how to market, because that's what this all boils down to. If you don't get out to some number of people, you're not going to get that percentage of true fans. So is it timely to talk about the marketing stuff now, or am I getting ahead of...
Well, you could put the Ariel Hyatt book up there.
Who I should mention is an old friend of mine. She's been to the Road Rally. This lady, Ariel Hyatt, is a genius at what she does. She is the best as far as crowdfunding advice, social media advice. She was on top of that way years before everybody else. So, and she's been to the Road Rally a couple times. I need to bring her back.
and specifically for music.
Yeah.
She worked at record labels for a long time. She actually was running the marketing for several artists that I helped get signed over the years, and we didn't realize it till she was hired to do marketing with an artist that I work with. And then we kind of compared notes, and we're like, oh, we've worked together
Wow.
without knowing each other. And so this book by her, this is a little older, so there is some stuff in there that's kind of not up to date with certain social media sites that don't exist anymore and things like that. But she not only talks about crowdfunding and sort of a lot of the stuff I'm mentioning, but she also, in this book, outlines an entire plan for building your audience before ever launching a campaign. And then she gives you a complete walkthrough of what to post, where to post, how to make this work during a campaign and after. So it's, even if it's a little dated, it's still, to me, for musicians, the best resource to kind of walk through how to do an actual campaign.
Here's another great application for everything that she teaches and everything you're talking about today. Doesn't have to just be for musicians, although that's the world that you and I clearly live in. But so many people are trying to be successful as podcasters, and they just can't break through because there's so much clutter out there on YouTube and the socials. You know what? You could crowdfund your podcast and create a whole other income stream that could potentially be bigger than what you're going to get from the advertising splits or whatever other form of revenue you're making.
Yeah. And she has several books that expand on just the marketing side of it. This one's obviously geared towards crowdfunding, but any of her books, from the oldest ones to the new one that just came out, like, they're all absolute manuals for how to market yourself. And, you know, like, Kickstarter itself is wonderful for music launches, but it's huge for, like, board games, independent video games. There's a ton of stuff that's sold on there. I mean, I just contributed to one today that was like, it's a frame that holds like a Mac Mini and then has a hub built in, and it looks cool.
I just saw that online yesterday because I just bought a new Mac Mini for a new person that starts here on Monday.
It makes it look like a Mac Pro, and it's got a whole hub built in. And yeah. So, like, this is other industries are latching onto this, and it's how they launch. And music is a good percentage of stuff on Kickstarter, but it's not the main thing. So, like, that's the other part of this is, like, this kind of knowledge and reading up on this type of thing and understanding this opens up a whole world of how companies fund themselves these days outside of music. So it might help to get over the discomfort of asking for money, to realize, like, almost any company could do something on there and, like, create a product.
So let's talk about taxes. When somebody nets $1 million like Amanda Palmer, people have this vision. I get this all the time. People's like, how many members does Taxi have? And they're multiplying that number times the annual fee. They forget that we spend, $300,000 a year just on Google clicks, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so let's say Amanda Palmer, anybody, makes $1 million. You're taxed. You have to pay taxes on that. So does the crowdfunding platform report the income to the IRS?
Yeah. Just like anything else, I mean, it's going to get reported and you have to pay your taxes. And then the bad part about it is, because her income shot up that much, she had to pay estimated tax for the following year. They're thinking that she's pulling in that much. So she had to save that much extra, pay estimated, and then wait to get it back for a year and a half. Wow. So, yeah, taxes always suck. There's no way around it. But it's better to have that money coming in and have a career built from it, and where you're going direct to your customers with that open communication than to not have that. I'd rather owe the taxes than not.
Yeah, it's a good, bad problem. But I would say, living in California, you're looking at 40 cents on every dollar is going to go to taxes between federal and state taxes. So word to the wise, I'm so thrilled that you're doing this, by the way, and you're so good at explaining stuff. And I think you'll inspire people to go try it. And I hope some people try it and they're successful at it. I hope they would let us know. So maybe we could get them on a future episode with you and me to dissect what they did that worked so well. But
I have a couple of examples coming up here that I think will be the inspiration for people watching. If you're curious about this, like, let's look at these. I'll get as detailed as I can about sort of the things you have to do in a campaign, but really we're just looking at the overall view of this. So just for some stats, because Ariel has some of this in her book, but this has changed over time. So Kickstarter's most current stats are that 42% of campaigns reach their funding goal, but that varies between different categories. They do actually have a page.
42% reach their goal.
Reach their goal. So around 60% fail. So you have to bear that in mind. Like, this stuff that you have to do going into it, the planning, the world building, the list building, and the direct communication with your followers is the most vital thing. So that when you get to the point where you're asking for their help, they are so committed to acting on your behalf that it's a no-brainer. And so it's a long process. It's a very involved process, but you're going to do this stuff anyway. You're just going to do it with more planning and thought behind it, and maybe at a faster clip than you would have normally. Okay, so the average financial result is $7,000 to $8,000. And over half of all Kickstarters raise between $1,000 and $10,000. And specific to music projects, the next category in terms of success is the $10,000 to $20,000 range. And like I said before, Kickstarter campaigns are different than the others in that they're all or nothing. So if the goal isn't reached, the artist gets nothing.
And the money at that point is just pledged, but it hasn't been sucked out of one bank account. It's pledged,
but they don't charge any credit cards until the campaign ends. So everybody's pledging that they're going to spend that, and nothing happens until it ends, and then there's a waiting period, and then
if you're $10 short of your goal, it'd be wise to whip out your own credit card and pay the last $10 to go over the line.
Do whatever it takes at the end if it's close. So the thing that I like about Kickstarter and why I have always remained on there and focused on it is, and this is just if you have any knowledge of like sales, that pressure added across the board, the customer and you as the person trying to achieve this goal. The pressure, in my mind, is a positive pressure. Knowing that there's a goal and it's all or nothing is an incredible sales motivator. So, like, if you know you're going to get to a number or not, but you'll get something anyway, you might not get out of bed and do those posts or contact those people.
Yeah.
The fear could set in more easily because you're like, well, I got far enough. But when it's all or nothing and you have no choice, then you're going to get out of bed. You're going to make those calls. So I like that about it. I like that the pressure is on. And also, I don't know about the other ones, but on Kickstarter, you can set the time of the actual campaign to exactly what you want. So I usually do them 21 to 30 days. And I just do a hyper focus to where you're in front of people the entire time, but mostly at the beginning and mostly at the end. But that they don't forget about you for the amount of time that it runs. So, and then, you know, a lot of this is begging sometimes when you get to the end, but that's how it goes. This is your career. Like, you're funding your art.
I've got to interject something.
Yep.
Sorry for the interruption, but this is worth noting that my dad, my grandparents were immigrants who started a small department store in a small town in central Illinois. My parents eventually took over that store. We were never wealthy. We were never poor. We had a Pontiac Catalina with an AM radio and no air conditioning. So, you know, maybe better than a Chevy or Ford, but no air conditioning, no FM radio. All to say that the city of Chicago and the suburbs expanded out to where the farm towns were, and malls came with them. My hometown, the downtown area dried up and all the merchants just got killed. And so my parents went broke at 65 years old. I mean, flat broke. They literally, thank God, their house was paid off, but they had no income other than Social Security, which back then wasn't a lot. My dad noted that my mother was a great cook, so he had her start to make salads and wraps out of their kitchen. He bought an old, like 30-year-old Ford van, welded a bicycle frame to a cart, and he would literally load that thing up with salads and wraps, drive an hour and a half into Chicago every day, and humbly push this cart around every floor of office building selling stuff. And turned it into a company that was generating several $1 million a year in revenue. And they didn't die broke. Yay, Dad. I'm very proud of him for that. I hope he's watching today. And the thing is, I said to him one time, probably 3-4 years before he died, I was in Chicago hanging out with him, and I said, I'm your age now. How did you find or I'm the age you were when you started this thing. How the heck, at 65 years old, did you find the energy to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work till 7 o'clock at night, 5 days a week? And he goes, it's the difference between surviving and not. That'll motivate anybody. And that's exactly what you're saying. It's easy to get unmotivated. And I like the fact that you mentioned, having the all or nothing model, it works in your favor to be that motivator. So thank you for giving me that minute to tell that story.
Yeah, that's amazing that he turned it around like that. They work together to do that. And that's the thing about this is like your music should be considered as important as that, because it's not just that you're putting out these songs. These change people. Like people are so affected emotionally by music, and I just remember like putting out my first thing, like I said earlier, a long time ago, but and it was just like, it was a lot different then, and you're going for record label deals and stuff like that, but I just remember one kid was like, it's all I listen to at night. I just play your stuff over and over and over again. And I was like, my God, that's it. Like, that's the feeling. That's the thing that I'm doing it for. Like, just to know that one person is sitting there going, this is it for me. Like, you said something or did something that hit me. And it's like like you owe it to yourself to look at every possible revenue avenue that you can create to put your music out there. And I'll say this as we keep going, like we're talking a lot about sort of money and like financing your art and all that kind of thing, but it's really not about money. A lot of what we're talking about is like having that direct relationship with your fans, having that open communication with people. The offshoot of that is that you can make money doing that, and they can help support you creating. But it's really about the relationships that you create. The money is just hopefully can come of that because you've become so important that they want to follow your journey and help you with that journey. But really, it's about them being on the journey with you more than it is that they're writing you a check.
This is why we do Taxi TV for free, why we do the Road Rally for free. People who it's like, dude, there have been years with the biggest loss I ever had at a road rally, even though the road rally was packed because the sponsor turnout was so low that year, maybe because of 9/11 or whatever. I had to write a check for $25,000 at the end of the road rally. My wife is like, why do you do this? Why don't you charge people? And I said, because it's about the community. These are the true fans of Taxi. They're true fans of each other. Relationships that have lasted 20 years have started at the road rally, in the registration line or at the bar at night. So I totally understand.
It always works out. It might have been bad that year, but it always works out. I remember Bruce Sweetend, Michael Jackson's engineer, wrote a book about his career in engineering, and I saw him at an AES show when I built my big studio. And so I was immediately showing him pictures, and he's like, oh, look at that. It's fantastic. And I had him sign my book, and I'm like, you're a huge influence, and it's wonderful meeting you. And he said, times go up and times go down and whatever, but there's always a need for what you do. Just remember. He's like, you might have rooms in that studio that are out of style tomorrow, but it's always going to come back around that people need what you do. Just persevere. That's the point. And that's the best advice I can give with any of this stuff is like, just keep going. That's the point, you know?
Yep.
Know what you're doing. And there's a lot of education from Taxi TV about sync and all that kind of thing. You had it, like last week's one was fantastic about Spotify and their ridiculous payment schedule for smaller musicians. Learn this stuff and dive in. And then there really is a way, there's a path to have a full career doing this. So anyway, without further ado, let's look at two complete unknown artists who started this with, we're going to start with Kristine Moon. This is a campaign that we launched to fund her first album. She had released 5 singles before this, and the crowdfunding was designed to cover the cost to complete a full album, including new mixes of those original singles.
And did you help her with this campaign?
Yep. Yeah, we sat and designed this. She actually used a lot of Ariel's book to kind of do the planning and build her audience going into it. But it was basically launched with only a few, maybe 100 followers on an email newsletter and just a few hundred here or there between different social media sites. So, you know, I would put her numbers at, you know, a few hundred followers.
Okay.
So the difference in her campaign from the last one that I'll show is that she actually hired a professional film director. That's the next photo. The indie brain. So this guy, Ishmael, is an actual film director, and indiebrain.com, I think, is the website. So he came into my studio, and you can see her video still on her Kickstarter.
Which, by the way, we're going to drop the links to this stuff in the description below.
And so this was fantastic because I got to sit in my own room and like see how a real director would light it and how he would frame the shots and all that kind of thing. And we had written out our own script, but we changed it in the moment depending on how things worked or how it felt to make sure we got the message across the right way. So it was a wonderful experience from my point of view to, you know, because I'm not a film director. And Kristine is actually a wonderful example of how you just keep going, because this is a new age artist. So the scope of a fan base for somebody doing exclusively new age music is a lot more limited than rock or pop. She is also a mother of 3 who homeschools her kids.
Wow. Full-time gig right there.
Yeah, so there's a lot in her script where she talks about that. Like, you know, I need support because I'm underwater. I'm overwhelmed on a daily basis. So if you are ever looking at your life and trying to figure out how to fit time in to write or do sync opportunities, I can assure you that if Kristine can figure it out, anybody can figure it out. There was a lot of stuff that we worked on where she would just desperately pull her phone up and sing something into it, send me just that with cars in the backgrounds or kids crying, and I would map out a song just based on that. I would time stretch it and like get it to a tempo and like auto tune it so I was sure it was on pitch, and then I would do the music around that, and then she would come in and we would arrange it. So there's always a way. So in developing the campaign, and this is in Ariel's book as well, what we start with is we put together a spreadsheet of everybody that the artist can think of. So a master list of like, you've never written out everyone. Now we're going to put a list together where like, it's not just who's on your email newsletter list. It's not just who's following you on social media that you know you can go to, but tell me everyone you have ever known or interacted with who would be interested in this or who you think would be excited to see it happening. Put all those names on a list, and then we will go through and say, this might work, this might work. So we created a master list of, I don't even know how many people, probably 500 to 800 people. When you really sit down and think about it, you know enough people that you could probably do a campaign. Out of that list, I asked her to pull out like a dozen people or so who would be considered the A team, which would be like, I don't know how you could describe them, sort of like a management group or a board of directors that you can kind of run stuff to.
The most engaged.
Yeah, the most engaged, and those who either will be very excited to share it online, not just like a comment that you make, but actually share it and talk about it and move it beyond there. And then we did a couple times where we had video calls with them, did a Zoom meeting, and talked about like, here's what we actually need when we would get up to the launch and the actual launch of this. And so we had sort of like a core group of people that are like the A team, the people we can go to for extra help, and we can run like the video through them and see what their opinions are.
And to some extent, not only are you engaging them, you're motivating them and using them, some of them, maybe all of them, as influencers as well, because they have their own tribe that doesn't know Kristine.
Exactly. Yeah, this does become a numbers game when you actually launch this and you get past the friends and family and the sort of like list of people you know will contribute. It starts to become a numbers game where you look at sell-through rate. You look at like, I need to get in front of this many eyes to get this many people to see the campaign, and then I have like a 3% sell-through rate where this many number of strangers look at it, and this many numbers of strangers click on it, and this many number of strangers will actually contribute. So you're counting on your list, but you know that if you do the work right, you're going to attract outside people to come in as well. So the other thing that I like to do on that list is have the artist write out, hold on, sorry. I like to have the artist write out what their feeling is that the people on the list who they think will contribute, what they feel that is the amount that they will contribute. Not that I think it's accurate, but because one of the pieces of metadata that you want to get out of doing this, again, it's not all about the money. It's really about the relationship that you're creating with your true fans, with your actual tribe. And so one of the data points I like to discuss is like the artist writes out the list, they write out what they think they can make. And then when the campaign ends, I like to look at that of their opinion of themselves and their opinion of what their followers will act on their behalf as, and then look at the actual truth of that. If there's a huge disparity between what you feel you can accomplish and what you actually accomplish, or who you thought on your list would perform for you and who actually does, then you're wrong about where you sit. You're wrong about your followers. You're wrong about who your tribe actually is. And that's a good thing.
Do a lot of people get that wrong because their ego might be a little inflated, or
it's usually like there's just some slight adjustments to go, you did better
so it's
here.
Not dramatic.
Yeah. It's usually not dramatic unless the only time I've seen it really dramatic is they paid for like playlists, like plays on Spotify. They did the type of thing where you're paying to get numbers up and then it's not real. Then suddenly you see this giant swing where like, oh, nobody over there contributed to anything. Why is that? Well, because they're not real. So the other thing that I like to get is like when you add up that number, then the artist will be like, okay, that's what I think I can achieve. And I always come to the table then and go, we're doubling that. Because you're the artist, and whatever you think you can do, you're selling yourself short because you're the artist. And I can guarantee you can double whatever you think you can do. And I would say this to anybody at a taxi road rally if we end up talking about crowdfunding. Whatever you believe about yourself, you can do more. So she had her list, she had her number, and we set her reward levels, which is actually the hardest part to figure out, like, what's actually cool to offer. So with Kristine's one, we did CDs, a book containing artwork and lyrics, which has turned out absolutely beautiful. And then like different levels where a custom song could be created at a certain level. So a lot of like parents like to invest at that level to like get a lullaby for one of their kids. And it's like a custom one-off NFR Lullaby for You. And then we have co-write level, which is a lot more
being
expensive.
not for release?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless if it was an original song, it could be, but a lot of that type of level will be like, can you do a Beatles song and do it in a lullaby form for my kid?
Definitely not to be released.
Yeah. And then there's like a co-write level, and then there's other levels of like, I'll perform live for you at your house. I'll do it like a house concert, that kind of thing. So so that's Kristine's. That's a homeschooling mother of 3 who pulled in about, let's see her final number. She pulled in some extra money outside of the campaign itself, because the other thing you'll find is some people are uncomfortable with Kickstarter. Grandparents and older parents are usually like, I don't know what this is. I'll just send you a check.
Right.
So she had 108 backers total and pulled in over $7,000. And this is for
did she meet her goal?
Yeah. That went over her goal. And it was a steady pace throughout her campaign. So we knew that we were going to achieve the goal before the end. But that paid, she got some money out of that. That paid for the rest of the album. It paid for all the reward level items that are going out to people. And this is a new age artist. Again, this is a very limited scope of audience. And going into that with barely a following, and she's only played live a few times.
Wow.
So going from ground zero to that is extraordinary. And so, I couldn't be happier with the result of that. Now, let's go to the next artist. This is Kira Takei. This is an artist who we started working together when she was a teenager, and we've worked together a long time now. So we did this Kickstarter to fund her first album. So she previously released about 7 singles, and the crowdfunding was designed to fund the full album, entirely new songs, not remixing any of the old stuff. And just like Kristine, Kira's social media numbers weren't huge going into this, and she had no email newsletter list or anything like that. She is a dance instructor, so she does have a dance career, so there's a lot of people who follow her for that side. But that doesn't mean that would cross over into music. So just music-wise, in terms of her following, it's the same kind of numbers, like maybe 100 people on the email newsletter list and several hundred between various social media. So with the links that will be in the description of this, if you watch Kristine's video, that's done by a real director who knows what he's doing and has proper lighting and $10,000 cameras and all that kind of thing. If you watch Kira's video, that was shot by me in the room with the iPhone 15 Pro Max using an iPad Pro as like the B camera. And then I edited all of this in Final Cut on the iPad. I didn't even use a Mac for the editing of this campaign video. So we scripted this out, and then we shot it live and just changed stuff as we needed to kind of whatever felt out of place. We fixed stuff in the moment, and we went through all the same patterns of how to develop it. We drew up the master list of everybody that she could possibly think of. She drew out what she thought she could pull in. We created an A team that would be sort of the close help, tight-knit crew for like running the whole thing, and did all this to develop the metadata to really know where she stands and who her audience actually is. So she launched this and hit the goal about halfway through, and then brought in a bit more before the end, and she ended up about $12,000 when you add in anything that came in from the outside, and that was from only 82 backers total.
Wow, tiny number.
Yep, and this is a pop artist, and she does have the dance background. So, like, if you look at her website, it's kiratakei.com, but and it's probably listed in her campaign. But she did write a single for a EDM group that's out of Poland called Kokadillas, and then we shot a video for that, and she's dancing through the whole thing. So, like, there was a lot of stuff starting to happen where other people were looking at her and stuff. So there was positive stuff going in that would increase her following number. But when you look at that final result, 82 backers contributed over $12,000. And she did get several people who contributed at the higher level of not just the CDs and like the swag items like t-shirts and sweatshirts, but we had people who contributed to a custom song. We had like 3 different people contribute to the co-writing level where they actually get to come into the studio and sit and co-write a song. And you know, you never know with that kind of thing. If you're co-writing and it's turns out great, you can release the song. So
we've got about 10 minutes left. How much more stuff do you have, or should I engage in some questions with me because we don't have a live chat going at the moment? How do you want to allocate the last 10 minutes? I'm game for
I have a few notes, but it's just kind of going over sort of particulars of running a campaign.
Well, let's lay them out. That's important stuff.
I'll just say them quickly.
Okay.
And there's more to talk about. And again, like my links will be in the description, and feel free to contact me if you have questions about this stuff. I don't have a website for like crowdfunding. I'm not trying to upsell something. I just like to help people. And I feel that a lot of what I've gone through with a lot of these campaigns is like these artists, whether young or old, whatever age range they're in or whatever talent level they're at or whatever career point that they're at, even if they're complete beginners, there's the fear of doing this and the lack of belief in what you can accomplish is really what holds you back. And none of it's based on the reality of what you can do. When I show 2 artists that pull in a good amount of money and they have no following, and then I look at anybody else, I'm like, no, you can completely do this. It just takes some organization and it takes some metadata creation so you can really make sure that you, when you say that this is my number or this is who likes me, you need to be accurate when you talk about that.
Give me an example of the metadata creation. Specifically, what are the KPIs, key performance indicators that you would use to build a metadata?
Like outside of what I already mentioned, like one of the best things I like to do is like describe who you think your true fan is. You know, we're trying to attract your true fan customer who is going to be willing to pay for whatever you create on a yearly basis. So define who that person is. And then as we go through a campaign, you quickly get to figure out, am I right about who I think likes what I do? Or is it wildly different than what I assumed?
So if you find that to be true, then you have to punt and readjust what you're doing, I'm assuming.
You have to pivot to where your true fan customer lives, and that's where your tribe is. And so it helps you hone in on who you actually appeal to and who's going to be your true audience. So it's invaluable for that. That's why I say it's not really about the money. The money is an offshoot of just getting so accurate about who your actual audience is. That's the important aspect of this, is that you learn who likes you and why, and then you can spend the rest of your days creating your art for that person who is the person who wants you to create that art for them.
Makes perfect sense.
It seems like it's just, you know, it's common sense, but this is like the hardest thing for most artists, is to understand where their tribe actually lives. So just in terms of like campaigns themselves, the video itself, the campaign video, you should always have a campaign video. I've seen a few succeed without it, but it's a lot harder. But the campaign video length should be the length of a song at the very most. And with people's attention spans today, as short as possible.
And let's talk about the video for a moment. I mean, there was a time several years ago where people would go find somebody who's in film school that had access to a good camera, good lighting and everything. And now so much successful social media is literally done on phones, edited on phones. It's amazing to me. So it almost, my feeling is when stuff is done on a phone, handheld phone no less, not even with some sort of, DJI Osmo or anything like that, it lends a certain amount of authenticity and credibility by shooting it like that. So the public has adjusted its thinking about, I like this because it feels real versus I almost feel like it's detrimental if you appear to be too slick. Is that a reasonable statement?
Absolutely. And like, that was like when we did Kristine's campaign and we had an actual director on that, we actually talked about that while he was here. Like, is it too polished? Like, we want you to make your artistic statement as a director, but by the same token, we're asking for financial help. Are we too fancy? Like, is it off-putting to people when we ask them to contribute $100 and they're like, well, I mean, it looks like Scorsese directed this. Why do you need help? So it's a huge consideration. And like I did the Kira Takei video, I wanted to do that for the experience of learning that and like, you know, going through all that headache and like paying attention to every tiny little detail of the edit and lining up the audio and everything. I wanted to learn that because it's a great skill to have. But also when you look at that video, you can tell it's between the Kristine Moon video and the Kira Takei video, you can tell one is done by a seasoned professional and one is not. Now, they both made their goal. So as you can see, it doesn't matter. Now, Kira's audience, she's 20 years old, so a lot of her contributors are in her age range.
Yeah, they've never seen anything that wasn't shot on an iPhone.
Yeah, they wouldn't have cared, you know, and they were all commenting on how great the video was and her messaging was great. And I was like, whoo, okay, I don't look stupid. At least we got that. But yeah, that's the thing is like I've seen campaigns with touring bands who go in and do a Kickstarter for a tour or for an album, and they just sit on a couch, turn on their phone, and just talk to camera. There's no script. They're just cracking jokes and talking about what they want to accomplish, and they just have a few notes to discuss, and that's it. And because it's real and it's conversational, they do great. So yeah, there's no overthinking this. The amount of production value I put into Kira's video was probably overdone just because I was obsessing about it.
So if you obsessed? No, come on, Kev.
Can you believe that?
This is the man when he jumps in, he goes in both feet
when
first.
I go full in, yes.
Yes, you do.
So the written portion of the campaign needs to be different than the video, but obviously you're talking about the same stuff, but you can expand a bit in the written portion, although it, again, needs to be concise. And what you need to think about is, who are you, what are you asking for, and what's in it for the contributor? Like, why do these people want to put money in for what you do? They may listen to
marketing.
Your music. Yeah, they may listen to your music and be completely blown away by you, but also they may need more. And one of the things that you're doing going into this to build your list is giving so much to your followers that the law of reciprocity kicks in, so that when you go to do the actual ask, there's no possible way they would say no, because you have given so much in access, in communication, in free songs, in anything, that your audience is there. And when you finally go, hey, I do actually need help, they're going to show up. So there's a lot of work in that. There's a lot of putting yourself out there in a way that will likely make you feel uncomfortable. But this is today's music business. This is how it works. So do it or don't.
Let me see if I've got any questions.
I have one more comment that I think is the important thing to say. So, okay. And then jump in with whatever you got. The thing that you need to think about, especially with the Taxi TV that you did last week with Spotify, again, devaluing smaller songwriters and artists, is that the end, what I found, and I work with record labels, I work with independent artists, so I see this from all different sides of where the industry is. And the thing that I notice more than anything is when you go through and you showcase the end product, if you just show up and go, I did an album, it's on Spotify, here it is, the value of the copyright has been eroded for so many years, and subconsciously in the listener's mind, that they'll just play it on Spotify. They don't care if Spotify is paying you or not. This is a conversation that doesn't enter into the thought process of a casual listener. They will experience you on Spotify, and then they will either save your album or they won't. And that's the extent of it. There's no value in the final result of that copyright. That's where sync comes in, because there is value syncing it to film and TV. Where there is still value as a creator to a regular person is in the process of creating that art. They don't care about the end result as much. They want to listen to it and put it on their own little custom playlist or whatever, but they're not going to pay $100 for it. They're going to pay their Spotify subscription and that's it. The part that still is emotionally connecting to regular people and that they're willing to put money into is getting behind the scenes, having access to you in the creation process, whether it's in the studio or just sitting there writing a song at home or being backstage at a show. The part that used to be the thing that you could never get with someone like Prince, where he's godlike and untouchable and you never get that access to him, that's the selling point today. So the more that you can be open in your communication and your back and forth conversation with people and bring them into your world, that's where the magic still exists.
It makes perfect sense.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Everything you've said today has just been utterly enlightening, and I'm so grateful that no, it's like I have not seen anybody present this topic as clearly as you have. Admittedly, I've fallen out of touch with Ariel Hyatt, who I said is the queen of this stuff. I recommend everybody Google her name, go to Amazon, search her, and buy her books because she is a genius at this stuff. So
and she can explain deeper and better than me.
I don't know, man. You did a pretty damn good job.
Well, thanks. I've experienced this enough in doing these and planning these that this was the dream all along. Like through the 90s and the 2000s, as I worked on these projects and I helped bands get signed and then things didn't work out most of the time. And you're like, it's not just that the band wrote those songs and did all this stuff and put their lives into it. Is that, hey, I produced this, man. I spent a year on this to let some moron at a record label destroy it because they didn't market it right. Like you're handing it off to people who don't really care where it goes from there, you know?
Classic example. We had a taxi band that got signed to MCA Records. The band was Bob Goblin. It was the mid-'90s, if memory serves. They actually asked us to manage them temporarily because when you're signing a major record label, then managers want to talk to you, real managers who actually know what they're doing, not just well-meaning fans or friends or, a real estate attorney that came to one of your shows. Anyway, so we agreed for 6 months we would manage them, give them the time to find somebody they felt comfortable and good about. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time that I got to see the inner workings of a major record label from the management perspective, trying to break an act. And you are so right on the money. Literally a week before the record was released, the label fired the old head of promotion and hired a new one. And this lady came in, she said, I don't get this band at all. I'm not touching it. And that was it. It was over.
Yeah. I can tell you a dozen stories of the exact same thing. Somebody left, the person who signed that band left, and the rest of them sit there going, I don't like this band.
Yeah.
Why are we bothering with them? And you're like, it's doomed. I just put in all this time. So just like for me, when crowdfunding became a thing and I saw somebody like Amanda Palmer be successful with it, it was like, this is the dream, is to, as a producer, go, I have a way to never fail with a band that can achieve a certain level of success. If you can get big enough that a record label back in that day would be interested in you and you can pivot to this now, it's a complete career. And so there's no more fading into obscurity with these songs that you create as a writer. There's, and again, it's not 1 million people. It's not 10 million people we're talking about. We're talking about numbers in the thousands. And I just gave you 2 campaign examples that were around 100. But that's a start. That's a beginning. That's a deeper knowledge of who your audience is so you can go and find the rest of them because you have the metadata to know your exact true fan. And then you can go out and do like pointed Facebook ads to find those people who resemble exactly what you just got all the data about.
Man, this has been so great. I've got one last question. We're already 5 minutes over, so I got to wrap it up. But the last question is for somebody, I'm assuming the majority of people seeing this probably don't even have an email list. Maybe some do, but I would guess 80-90% don't. Don't have a lot of true fans. So for people who have practically no fan base to work from, but they think that what you're saying makes perfect sense and they'd like to do it, which of the crowdfunding platforms would be the one that would be the best one for them to start with, based on them having no previous fan base?
That's one of the things that you kind of identify as you kind of develop the plan of who is my real true fan, who do I think is my customer, who is somebody who resembles like the tribe that would follow anything that I do. As you start to describe that, hopefully you're accurate, but you'll figure it out as you go. But are those people that you describe as what would be your true fan, would they be more comfortable with Patreon, where it's a monthly subscription model? Would they be more comfortable with $10 a month getting access to stuff that you're doing? Would they be more comfortable with the all or nothing fever pitch campaign to go for one product? That's a big part of this. I think something like Patreon might be the way to test the waters, because you can just do a $1 a month easy access, and I'll give you one song a month for that, and let's see how it goes. But again, in my mind, like, it takes as much. One of the big things I found in my career over all these years is it takes as much work to ask for this level of money as it does to ask for this level of money. So in other words, if you're going to ask for this level of help, trust me, when you sit down and do the work, it's no more than what it takes to organize yourself to ask for this amount of help. Why wouldn't you just ask for that amount? When I was putting together all the stuff and we were working on my big studio, like, we had to go to banks, we had to go to investors. And the thing we all came to realize was, like, I just sat here doing paperwork all day to get stuff ready to go to present to a bank. Why are we only asking for this amount?
Yeah.
Just change the number and we can finish this much more. It's the same amount of work. So that's the thing to me, is like, don't sell yourself short. Or organize this, figure out who you think your customers are, go there to them and ask them directly, where would you be most comfortable? If I ran a crowdfunding campaign that's all or nothing, would you be willing to support it? If I did a Patreon thing where it's a monthly subscription, what would you be willing to pay? What kind of access would you want? What would you like in return? Find your tribe by asking questions and put yourself out there and create that open communication, and they will tell you. You have to put music out there in front of people, and you have to put yourself out in front of them to start building this kind of data.
This has been amazingly informative, and I can't thank you enough for once again so far exceeding my expectations and having you on the show. I'm so incredibly glad that I happened to see your name pop up in the database that day, and we reconnected, because you're giving out a wealth of incredible information, and I hope you can come to the Road Rally. You should definitely do a class on this. I'm sure a lot of members would love to meet you. And I want to plug his engineering, production, and mastering stuff, kevinmcnoldy.com. McNoldy is MCNOLDY, not MAC. So kevinmcnoldy.com. You can go look at pretty pictures of his purple and white room, which is incredibly sexy. Looks like it was done by the people who did the Virgin Atlantic jet interiors. And I will talk to you when I get back from my trip, because you and I need to hang out more, man. I think you're fascinating. You're so generous with this stuff. And with that, I bid you a grateful and fond farewell. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin McNoldy.
Thank you.
Kevin, weird audio. Do you hear music?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not getting it, so I'm going to do a fade without hearing it. So weird.
Okay.
You like this, guys? Audience? Fading without hearing. I've done fade so many times I could do it visually.
It's great because I'm hearing it and the fade.